Hello and welcome. The news says Taiwan assists China capsized boat rescue. Denmark to draft women into military. Thailand, Laos, grim junta amid ASEAN Myanmar impasse. China, Russia, Iran conduct Mid-East naval drills and U.S. House passes bill to potentially ban TikTok nationwide. Taiwan and China hold a joint rescue mission to find two missing crew members after a fishing vessel capsized near Taiwan's Kinmen Islands. According to authorities in Taiwan on Thursday, the boat carrying 6 people sank about 1.07 nautical miles, about 2 kilometers southwest of the island chain's Dongding Islet, about 6 a.m. 22 hours GMT on Wednesday. 2 people have been confirmed dead and 2 were rescued. The area is sensitive because Kinmen is located just 5 kilometers 3 miles off China's eastern coast. The joint operation, which includes 6 Chinese rescue ships, comes a month to the day after Taiwanese Coast Guard's pursuit of a Chinese fishing boat in the area left 2 men dead and increased the tensions between Taipei and Beijing. Taiwan sent 4 boats after Chinese authorities sought help, Coast Guard Chief Chu Mi-woo told a parliamentary committee. He said Chinese requests for assistance were common, with 119 people rescued in such efforts over the past 3 years or so. China's Coast Guard started consistent patrols around the Kinmen Island after last month's incident. It also came under condemnation in Taiwan after briefly boarding a Taiwanese ship, triggering panic among the passengers. Beijing claims Taiwan as its own territory and has not ruled out the use of force to achieve its goals. Denmark to call up women as well as men as it expands conscription to reaction to Europe's changing security climate. Mette Frederiksen, Danish Prime Minister, said the reviewed policy was intended to surge the number of young people doing military service. Recruits will also be anticipated to serve more time in the military, 11 months compared with 4 months at the moment. We are not rearming because we want war, destruction, or suffering. We are rearming right now to avoid war and in a world where the international order is being challenged, the Prime Minister said, according to reports on Wednesday, adding that indirectly referring to Russia's military moves in recent years and months. Denmark, a founding member of the NATO alliance, also plans to boost its defense budget by 40.5 billion Danish crowns, that's 5.9 billion US dollars, over the next 5 years. Frederiksen said defense spending will amount to 2.4% of gross domestic product GDP this year, and in 2025, above NATO's benchmark for member states. The country scaled back its military capabilities after the end of the Cold War in the early 1990s, but Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has reawakened concerns about security on the continent. President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday said Russia will send troops to its border with Finland, which joined NATO last year as a result of the Russian invasion, as Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo cautioned Moscow was gearing up for a long conflict with the West. The situation in Europe has become more and more serious, and we have taken into an account when we look at future defense, Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen said. A broader basis for recruiting that includes all gender is needed, he said, adding it will create a more versatile and more complete defense. According to official figures, Denmark presently has as many as 9,000 professional soldiers in addition to 4,700 conscripts undergoing basic training. The government wants to increase the number of conscripts by 300 to reach a total of 5,000. Under the revised draft, conscripts will first spend 5 months in basic training, followed by 6 months in operational service along with supplementary training. The new system will require a change in the law, which Poulsen said will happen in 2025 and take effect in 2026. Now, Thailand's controversial humanitarian initiative with crisis-torn Myanmar is facing rising condemnation even after its fellow members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, appeared to collectively endorse the scheme. The ASEAN Foreign Ministers' retreat ended recently in Luang Prabang, the old capital of landlocked Laos, with a highlight on the delayed 5-point consensus agreed between the bloc and the Myanmar military shortly after it seized power in a 2021 coup. An official from Myanmar attended the meeting for the first time since the military regime was shot out of the top summit for failing to take steps to end the crunch. Democracy activists and politicians have continually called on ASEAN to take a more vigorous approach against Min Aung Hlaing and his generals, officially known as the State Administration Council SAC. But with Laos now chairing the organization, skepticism is rising. After taking over the ASEAN chairmanship, Laos appointed a special envoy to Myanmar, separate from its foreign minister in a break from precedent. Career diplomat Alan Kyo Kitikon visited Myanmar's capital, Naypyidaw, in mid-January, meeting the generals and taking a page from Cambodia's playbook of 2022 when it shared the grouping. Like Cambodia, and perhaps even more so, Laos is seen as close to China. Letitia van den Assum, a former Dutch ambassador to Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, said ASEAN's foreign ministers endorsed the much criticized Thai humanitarian initiative, and given the growing role of China and other Myanmar neighbors since Operation 1027, ASEAN appears to be fading into the background, referring to the offensive launched by ethnic Angles and anti-coup forces late last year that took swaths of territory from the military. She says Vietnam's year-long stint as chair is likely to be a hard slog. Sasa, a cabinet minister with Myanmar's National Unity Government, NUG, notes the group had failed to act even after the SAC's atrocities over the past 3 years blatantly disregarded ASEAN's 5-point consensus, which instructs an end to the violence, undermining the bloc's standing. According to reports, warships from China, Russia, and Iran have held live-fire drills in a major Middle Eastern waterway this week as the three partners put on a show of force in the volatile region. The exercises close to the Gulf of Oman, involving over 20 ships from the three countries, are aimed at strengthening maritime cooperation and safeguarding regional peace and stability, a statement from the Chinese Defense Ministry said, resounding similar language from Iran and Russia. China's Navy sent a guided missile destroyer and guided missile frigate to the drills. Russia posted the cruiser Varyak from its Pacific fleet, and Iran contributed a range of vessels, including frigates and fast attack boats, according to reports. The exercises are in their sixth incarnation since 2018, scheduled to run through Friday, reports from Russia says. But they coincide with the most turbulent time the region has seen over the 6 years, noted Iran. The joint exercise comes at a time of heightened tensions in the region, it said, citing the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza, which has threatened to spiral into a wider regional conflict. The Gaza conflict has already spread to international waters in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, where Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen have fired missiles and drones at international military and commercial vessels. The drills cover 17,000 square kilometers, that's 6,500 square miles of sea in an area of strategic importance to the whole world, Iranian Rear Admiral Amur al-Nozori said. The Iranian report also noted that the nation's navy was introducing latest vessels to this year's exercises, equipped for extended ocean missions and armed with advanced domestically developed weaponry, though it did not specify what those weapons were. Iran is a major supporter of both Hamas in Gaza and the Houthi rebels. Numerous of the munitions used by both groups are believed to come from Tehran. Iranian munitions, including its Shahed aerial drones, have also become an important part of Russia's arsenal in its war on Ukraine. Meanwhile, relations between China and Russia have strengthened following the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, triggering deep suspicion in the West, including over worries about Beijing's position as Moscow's vital economic lifeline. Now on social media, the U.S. House of Representatives has passed a landmark bill that could seal TikTok barred in America. It will give the social media giant's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, 6 months to sell its controlling stake, or the app will be blocked in the United States. While the bill passed awesomely in a bipartisan vote, it still requires to clear the Senate and be signed by the president to become law. Lawmakers have long held fears about China's influence over TikTok. TikTok is owned by Chinese company ByteDance, founded in 2012. The Beijing-based firm is registered in the Cayman Islands and has offices across Europe and the United States. If the bill does manage to secure approval in the Senate, President Joe Biden has vowed to sign it as soon as it lands on his desk, which could trigger a diplomatic pact with China. ByteDance will have to seek approval from Chinese officials to finish a forced divestiture, which Beijing has promised to oppose. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said the step will come back to bite the United States. Mike Gallagher, a Wisconsin Republican who co-authored the bill, said the U.S. could not take the risk of having a dominant news platform in America controlled or owned by a company that is obliged to the Chinese Communist Party. Chinese companies are subject to a national security law needing them to share data with the government on request. TikTok has tried to sue the regulators that it has taken measures to ensure the data of its 150 million users in the U.S. has been walled off from ByteDance employees in China. Xu Zichu, TikTok chief executive, said the company was committed to keeping its data secure and the platform free from outside manipulation. He warned the bill, if passed, will mean a ban on the app in the United States, giving more power to a handful of other social media companies and putting thousands of American jobs at risk. A probe by the Wall Street Journal in January, however, found the system was still porous, with data being illegally shared between TikTok in the US and ByteDance in China. High-profile cases, including one incident where ByteDance employees in China accessed a journalist's data to track down their sources, have stoked fears. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said the chamber will now revise the legislation. Its prospects in the upper chamber of Congress are uncertain in the wake of Republican White House candidate Donald Trump speaking out against the bill. On more stories still on the U.S. TikTok ban, U.S. TikTok ban an act of bullying, China says. China has labeled a potential TikTok ban as an act of bullying that will backfire on America. On Wednesday, the comments made by China's foreign ministry came hours before a House of Representatives vote on legislation that will force TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance to sell the popular short video app to an American company, or face being banned in the U.S., where it boasts over 170 million users. Wang Wenbin, a spokesperson for the ministry on Wednesday in Beijing, said even though the U.S. has not found evidence on how TikTok endangers its national security, it has never stopped going after TikTok. Wang accused the U.S. of resorting to acts of bullying when it could not succeed in fair competition, saying such practice will disrupt market operations, undermine investor confidence, and sabotage the global economic order. U.S. officials and lawmakers have long voiced worries that the Chinese government could compel TikTok's parent ByteDance to hand over data collected from U.S. users. They also fear that the app could serve as a tool for Beijing to spread propaganda, misinformation, or influence Americans. Cybersecurity experts say the national security fears surrounding TikTok remain a hypothetical, albeit troubling scenario. U.S. officials have not publicly presented evidence that the Chinese government has accessed the user data of U.S. TikTok users, an outcome that lawmakers say the bill is envisioned to stop. The House vote will proceed under fast-track rules that need a two-thirds majority for passage, which appears likely given widespread bipartisan support. The bill will then head to the Senate, where its fate is less certain. In recent comments, Wisconsin Republican Rep. Mike Gallagher, who chairs a House Select Committee on China, rejected characterizations of the bill as a TikTok ban. China has previously said it will firmly oppose any forced sale of TikTok. Now in Russia, Kyiv aims Russian oil refineries pre-Putin re-election. Ukraine has launched drone attacks on no less than 3 oil refineries deep inside Russia as Kyiv deepens its cross-border strikes days before President Vladimir Putin's anticipated re-election. On Wednesday, Ukrainian defense source said Ukraine is implementing a well-planned strategy to reduce Russian economic potential. It hit 3 Russian oil refineries aimed in the cities of Ryazan, almost 130 miles southeast of Moscow, Kostovo in the Nizhny Novgorod region, nearly 300 miles east of the capital, and Kirishi in Russia's northwest. The trio of facilities are among Russia's major refineries, the report says. A representative of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine said on Wednesday a fourth facility, the Novoshaktitsky oil refinery in Rostov-on-Don, was also hit. It marked the second consecutive day of Ukrainian attacks on Russian energy sites, and the locations besieged represent a spate of attacks well within Russia's territory. They came after a chaotic day on the Russian side of the Ukrainian border, during which pro-Ukrainian groups of Russian fighters said they launched cross-border attacks and claimed to have gained control of the village of Tyoktykino in Russia's Kursk region. The village remained under fire all day on Wednesday, the regional governor said. The fallout from the attack continued into Wednesday. The Freedom for Russia Legion, a group of Russian dissidents fighting for Ukraine, which has earlier claimed responsibility for invasions into Russia, said in a series of posts on social media on Wednesday that its fighters had damaged its command center in the village of Tyoketkino in the Kursk region and were advancing even further. Now in Africa, Putin reassures France of Russian presence in Africa. Russian President Vladimir Putin said that intensified Russian influence in Africa has triggered an emotional reaction in French President Emmanuel Macron. Putin said, according to reports on Wednesday, that I think there is some kind of resentment, but when we maintained direct contacts with him, Macron, we spoke quite openly on this topic. Putin also maintained that Russia did not go into Africa and force France out, and that Macron's major problem was to do with Wagner being a Russian organization. It's probably more convenient to be offended by someone without seeing your own problems. Perhaps such an acute or rather emotional reaction on the parts of the French president is also connected with what is happening in some African states, he said. He said he was not inciting anyone and was not setting anyone up against France. In just a moment, I'll bring you more stories from Nigeria. Don't go anywhere. You're welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Now, stories from Nigeria says more uproar over 3.7 trillion naira gap in 2024 budgets. More hullabaloo appear to be spinning around the 2024 budget as more signs that the portion of the budget attributable to some federal government institutions lack specifics and transparency. The affected institutions, including the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), were allocated between 3.5 trillion naira and 3.7 trillion naira without specific expenditure heading or stipulations of what the funds were intended for. These were some of the findings of Budget, a fiscal policy analytics and advocacy organization, with its co-founder Shehu Onigbinde, declaring that Senator Abdul Ningi, who blew the whistle on the budget, was right about the low level of transparency in the 2024 Appropriation Act. This came as yesterday Abba Moro, the minority leader of the Senate, stated concerns that the Senate is presently having credibility problems following suspension of the whistleblower, Senator Abdul Ningi. This is even as yesterday Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed also threw his weight behind Senator Ningi, the lawmaker representing Bauchi Central Senatorial District, who was handed a 3-month suspension by the Senate for his uncover, just as Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, and Transparency International of Nigeria, TI Nigeria, declared Senator Ningi's suspension as sheer attack on freedom of expression and opposition's rights. Likewise, the presidential candidate of Labour Party in the 2023 general elections, Peter Obi, urged the Senate to come clean and clear all allegations associated with the 3 trillion naira padding in the 2024 budget. Onibinde late Tuesday stated, and I quote, "There should be a detailed breakdown of the budget. On that point, Senator Ningi is right." Ningi of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, resigned as chairman of the Northern Senators Forum, even as he was suspended by his colleagues in the Red Chamber on Tuesday over budget padding allegations. And finally, on the news on insecurity, Tinubu opposes ransom for freeing kidnapped victims. President Bola Tinubu has said the federal government will not pay any ransom to secure the release of abducted victims. Mohammed Idris, Minister of Information and National Orientation, revealed this according to reports on Wednesday after the Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by Tinubu at the presidential villa in Abuja. The minister acknowledged the concerning rise in kidnapping incidents, citing recent cases in Kaduna, Borno, and Sokoto states. Nevertheless, he stressed that the president has deemed this situation unacceptable and that the government will not condone abductions, kidnappings, or any form of criminality. The government's stand comes amid rising concerns over the growing kidnapping crunch, with criminal elements aiming vulnerable groups, including children, in search of soft targets. Remember that over 280 pupils and teachers of Government Secondary School and LEA Primary School at Kuriga, Kaduna State were abducted by bandits last Thursday. Suspected terrorists attacked the Buddha community in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State, abducting about 61 people last Wednesday. Recently also, 200 women were reportedly kidnapped by Boko Haram terrorists in the Gomboru Ngala and Dikwa local government areas of Borno State. The women, who were internally displaced persons, were said to have been kidnapped while they went into the bush in search of firewood. Recognizing the severity of the situation, Idris said President Tinubu has directed security agencies to take proactive measures to halt the spread of this criminal activity. The minister further highlighted the government's firm commitment, emphasizing it's important to underscore that no dime, government is not paying anybody any dime, and the government is optimistic that these children and other people that have been abducted will be brought back to their families in safety. A recap of major stories says Taiwan assists China capsized boat rescue. Denmark to draft women into military. Thailand, Laos groom junta amid acing Myanmar impasse. China, Russia, Iran conduct Mid-East naval drills, and U.S. House passes bill to potentially ban TikTok nationwide. And today is World Kidney Day. Protect your kidneys and stay healthy. I am Lois Reki. Have a nice day.